Hello and welcome. We're diving straight into a global energy crisis that is, right now, sending shockwaves through economies all over the world. We're going to break down what's happening and show you exactly why it's such a big deal. So let me just start with this question. What actually happens when a full quarter of the world's ocean-faring oil just stops? Now, this isn't some hypothetical classroom exercise. It's real. The shutdown of one tiny waterway has set off a massive chain reaction, and we're about to unpack what that means for global trade, for inflation, and frankly, for all of us.
Okay, here's our game plan. First, we're going to zero in on the choke point that's at the center of all this. Then, we'll look at the immediate price shock. What happened the second the oil stopped flowing? After that, we'll see who's really paying the price, because it's not the same for everyone. We'll get into the high-stakes geopolitical game that's being played, and finally, we'll talk about the long-term consequences, the long shadow this whole thing is casting.
All right, first things first. To really get a grip on these global shockwaves, we have to start with one very specific, very important spot on the map.
So this is the Strait of Hormuz, and let me tell you, it's so much more than just a waterway. You can think of it as the jugular vein of the world's energy supply. And it's not just oil either. You've got critical resources like fertilizer coming through here, which means a disruption directly impacts our ability to grow food. It's a huge deal for global food security.
And this number, this really says it all. 25%. A full quarter of all oil that travels by sea has to squeeze through this one narrow passage. So when it gets blocked, it's not just some regional problem. Nope. It becomes a full-blown global economic emergency, and the effects are felt immediately, everywhere, from Tokyo to London.
So the moment that flow of oil slams to a halt, what happens next? Well, the economic shockwave hit the global markets almost instantly. Boom, an immediate price spike. The price of Brent crude oil, which is the benchmark for the whole world, shot up $10 a barrel, pretty much overnight. That kind of jump sends a massive jolt through the energy markets, and it kicked off turmoil on stock exchanges all the way from Asia to Europe as everyone braced for what was coming next. And this is where it gets really unsettling. This quote from an analyst nails it. We are past the point of easy fixes. Those buffers he's talking about, that's stuff like strategic oil reserves countries keep for emergencies, or the oil that was already on its way in tankers. That's all been used up. The global market is now running on empty, with no safety net. And here's the shortfall in cold, hard numbers. 10 million barrels a day. That's about 10% of the entire planet's daily oil demand that has just vanished from the market. Trying to plug a hole that big is a monumental, maybe impossible challenge for the whole world.
So with prices going through the roof and supply getting strangled, who actually pays the price for all this? Because while this crisis is being felt everywhere, it is absolutely not being felt equally.
And right here, you can see the two completely different realities of this crisis. For developing nations, especially in South and Southeast Asia, the pain is right now and it is severe. We're talking fuel rationing, power cuts, your daily life coming to a grinding halt. For developed nations like the US and in Europe, it's more of a slow burn. It shows up as that nagging, accelerating inflation, and it creates this massive headache for central banks who are trying to stop their economies from spinning out of control.
An economic crisis this big, of course, lights a fire under the world's geopolitical chessboard. So let's take a look at how the major players are trying to make their next move.
At the very center of this game is Iran, and they have rolled out a strategy that is, well, it's as controversial as it is unprecedented. They're controlling passage through the strait with a system that people in the shipping industry have started calling the toll booth.
And this breaks down exactly how this toll booth system works. It's actually a really organized process. Shippers have to negotiate passage, and they pay a massive fee to get through. But look, this is about way more than just paying a toll. This move fundamentally challenges the centuries-old principle of free navigation on the open seas. If this becomes the new normal, what's to stop any country from setting up a toll booth on a critical trade route? It sets an incredibly dangerous precedent for all of global commerce. Meanwhile, the other big players are in a real jam. You've got the European Union, which is trying to stick to its long-term goal of getting off Russian energy. But these sky-high prices are causing just immense economic pain at home. And then there's Russia, which is trying to take advantage of the chaos. Yeah, they're enjoying the higher prices, but their own infrastructure is getting hit, which means they can't really step in and fill that global supply gap even if they wanted to.
So, finally, let's zoom out and look at the long shadow this crisis is casting. The fallout goes way beyond the price you pay for gas. It's creating these deep, lasting risks for the entire global economy.
So what's the really crucial point here? It's that this crisis is creating these deep structural cracks in the system. Iran's toll booth could literally unravel international maritime law as we know it. Central banks are trapped, right? They're forced to choose between fighting inflation, which could cause a recession, or letting prices run wild. And maybe the most critical point of all, this level of uncertainty just freezes the huge long-term investments we need to build our future energy supply. And that makes the next energy shock potentially even worse.
Which really brings us to the final and frankly pretty unsettling question. The world is caught in this spiderweb of interconnected risks, with every country just looking out for itself. Is there any clear path forward out of this mess?
And I think this assessment from Middle East analyst Samuel Helfont just captures the moment perfectly. As he says, there is no clear endgame. It's a fiendishly complex problem with no obvious solution in sight, and it's leaving the entire global economy teetering on a knife's edge.